Europe is a test case for a very special reason. Europe has always considered itself the avant-garde of secularism. In 2013, the European Union published guidelines on the promotion and protection of freedom of religion or belief, not just at home, but the world over. In 2016, WION The World was appointed special envoy for this, for the promotion of freedom of religion or belief outside the EU. That's how seriously they take their role. In 2018 and 2019, Europe sanctioned countries for the way they treated Muslims, mostly for good reason, but also because Europe felt the moral authority and responsibility to tell the world how to treat minorities. As recently as 2020, the European Parliament wanted to discuss India's Citizenship Amendment Act and the removal of special status of Kashmir. It had no business doing so, but the EU, the self-appointed gatekeeper of secularism, wanted to lecture India on the treatment of minorities. Cut to November 2020, Europe itself is rushing to legislate on religion. Come December, France will table a bill that will help the state regulate Islam. It will help the state monitor the funding of French mosques. It will create a certificate program for French imams, and it will ban homeschooling for young children to prevent the creation of Islamic schools or madrasas. Now, we've been tracking the rising radicalism and terror attacks in France, and we understand that this is the need of the hour. But imagine how Europe would have reacted if a country like India had mooted this. If a non-European, non-Western country had planned such a bill, Europe would have cried Islamophobia. It would have sat down to draw a list of sanctions against the country. It would have slapped its leaders with a travel ban, probably frozen their assets. But now terror has struck home, and they've realized secularism cannot be the fig leaf for appeasement. France is legislating to create its own brand of Islam, and in doing so, France does not care if it's being called an Islamophobic country. Europe is finally learning to crack down on terror, and unfortunately, it is learning the hard way, just like the United States did post the attacks of 9/11. Before the two planes crashed into the Twin Towers, America took pride in preaching secularism, even enforcing it elsewhere. In 1998, the Clinton administration created the Office of International Religious Freedom, or IRF, within the US State Department. 3 years later, Washington found itself looking at every Muslim with suspicion. At least 1,200 people were detained by the end of November 2001. In her book, Detained Without a Cause, Iram Sheikh writes that US immigration officials began categorizing Muslims as quote-unquote special interest cases. My message tonight is to the European Union, the leaders of the Western world who for decades have lectured others. You cannot turn your back to terror in the name of secularism. Yes, there are countries guilty of genocide and persecution of minorities. I'm sure we've run more reports on this show on China's Uyghur Muslims than most other networks. China must be called out, even sanctioned. But you can't paint all with the same broad brush. Europe's lectures on the CAA and Kashmir were an overreach. India's tour of European MPs to seek validation on Kashmir even worse. If Europe must compare its own brand of secularism to India's, it should see which has worked. Going forward, Europe cannot confuse appeasement with secularism. It is time to work on the fault lines, to counter terror with all sincerity without making any exceptions. Thank you for watching Gravitas on WION's YouTube channel. If you want to stay up to date with what's happening around the world, then subscribe to our channel and don't forget to like and share. Thank you very much for watching WION. The World is One.